A museum drawer slides open under a cold overhead light, and inside, cushioned in gray foam, is the top of a skull turned to stone. It is a child's skull, almost 2 million years old, and set into the dome of it, side by side, are two neat round holes. For 50 years, nearly everyone who looked at bones like this one saw the same story written in them. A weapon, a murder, our own ancestors as brutal killer apes clubbing each other to death at the dawn of the world. It was the story people wanted, in a way, because it made us the dangerous ones from the very start, the natural-born killers who inherited the earth by force. Then one careful man picked up a fossil tooth and laid it slowly against those two holes. It was not a weapon, it was a bite. And in that single moment on a quiet lab bench in South Africa, the whole dark story of who we used to be turned completely inside out. His name for tonight is Tsao, and the first thing to understand about him is that he is not a hunter. He is a young Paranthropus, a branch of early humankind built for chewing rather than killing, with massive jaws, huge flat grinding molars, and a bony crest running along the top of his skull. That crest anchors muscles powerful enough to grind roots and tubers and hard, gritty plants all day long, which is exactly how he survives, not by chasing meat, but by out-chewing the dry land itself. He is small, barely more than a meter tall, slow on the open ground, and armed with nothing at all but his own soft hands. He has no claws, no fangs, no horns, no speed, and no venom, none of the weapons the other animals of his world carry as a matter of course. What he has instead is a group, a band of others like him, and a nervous, watchful cleverness that keeps him alive from one dangerous day to the next. His powerful jaw, the very thing that defines his kind, is a tool for grinding vegetation, not for fighting. It can crush a nut or a tuber, but it is useless against a charging cat. Everything about his body says survivor, not warrior, a specialist in outlasting hunger, not in winning a fight he was never built to win. He lives in the Dolomite Hills of southern Africa, a rolling landscape of pale rock and dry grass that we now call, without irony, the cradle of humankind. It is beautiful and it is lethal, because the rock beneath the grass is riddled with caves and sinkholes and hidden vertical shafts, and the hills are studded with trees. By day, Tsao's band forages the open ground for plants, always moving, always keeping one eye on the dark line of the trees where the danger waits, because these hills do not belong to Tsao, they belong to the cats. Leopards hunt these slopes, and so does something worse, a heavy, powerful false saber-tooth called dinofleas, an ambush cat that some researchers suspect may have specialized in hunting the slow, soft apes of exactly these hills. For a creature like Tsao, the whole world divides into two simple states, the open ground where he can see what is coming and the shadows where he cannot. When the light begins to fail, his band crowds together and climbs or presses back into a cleft in the rocks, because the night in these hills does not belong to them at all. He is not the top of anything here. He is not the apex, not the predator, not the master of his own valley. In this land, Tsao is a small, soft, meat-bearing animal living inside a country that is owned, from the treetops to the cave shafts, by things that eat him. Here is the thing that Tsao half knows, in the way that all prey animals know things, a fear without a clear map, a dread attached to the trees themselves. Those trees on the slopes are not merely shade and shelter. To a leopard, a tree is a storehouse, a larder, a place to keep meat safe. A leopard makes its kill on the ground and then drags the body straight up into the branches, hauling prey heavier than itself into the canopy to keep it away from the hyenas and lions that would steal it. Up there, safe above the ground, the leopard feeds at its leisure over days, eating the soft parts and letting the rest simply drop when it is done. And directly beneath a great many of those feeding trees, hidden in the grass, is the open mouth of a cave shaft, a dark throat leading down into the hill. The heavy, awkward, inedible pieces the leopard discards, the skull, the shoulders, the joints too big to swallow, tumble from the branches and fall down that shaft into the dark. Down there in the cool and the silence, the bones settle onto the slowly building floor of the cave, and there they stay for a very long time. This is the reason, it turns out, that hominin skulls pile up underground in the first place, not because our ancestors lived in these caves, but because the cats fed in the trees directly above the shafts. For decades we found their bones in the dark and assumed the caves were their homes. The truth is that the caves were their graves, filled from above by something with claws. Now understand what that means for where Tsao and his band lie down to sleep each night. The very ground they walk, the rocks they shelter beneath, the trees they climb for safety, some of them are roofed by a predator's pantry, hung with the bodies of the eaten. Above them in the dark canopy, in branches they cannot see into once the sun goes down, hang the remains of other animals the cats have carried up these very hills. And below them, down the shaft, lies a slow-filling graveyard of everything the leopards have ever eaten here, including, across the long years, a great many creatures who looked and moved and died exactly like Tsao. The true horror of this place is not some monster lunging out of the black. It is the quiet, patient arithmetic of it, that the cave beneath your bed is slowly filling, one dropped skull at a time, with your own kind. And no one in the band can see it or name it because they cannot climb down the shaft, cannot count the dead below, cannot know that the ground they trust is the floor of a slow catastrophe. It happens fast, and it happens the way it has always happened, the way it will happen 1,000 more times in these hills. The band is out in the last light, foraging, strung a little too far apart, tired and hungry and thinking about the roots in the dirt instead of the shadows at the edge of the grass. They forage the way herd animals graze, trusting in numbers and in many pairs of eyes, each one quietly counting on all the others to keep the watch. From the tree line, flattened in the tall grass, the cat has been watching them for a long, patient while. It has no interest in the strong ones bunched in the middle of the group. Its whole attention is fixed on the edge, on the straggler, the young one, the one who has wandered a few steps too far from the rest. Tonight, that one is Tsao, bent low over the ground at the fraying edge of his band, alone in a way he does not yet understand. This is the oldest arithmetic of predator and prey, the reason herds and bands exist at all: safety in the middle, death at the margins, and the constant, unspoken pressure to never be the one who drifts too far. Tsao has broken that rule tonight for the smallest of reasons, a patch of good roots just beyond the others, and the smallest of reasons is all it ever takes. There is no warning, no sound, no chance to run. The charge crosses the open ground between them in a single heartbeat, and the cat's jaws close over the top of Tsao's skull before the rest of the band has even begun to turn. Two long lower canines punch cleanly through the dome of his head, leaving two neat holes set precisely a jaw's width apart, and it is over almost before it began. And then the cat simply lifts him and carries him off, the way a house cat carries a mouse, up off the ground and away toward the trees. The band scatters into the falling dusk in every direction, and by the time they stop running and gather again in the dark, Tsao is already high in the branches, out of reach, out of the world. He is gone, and in the cool dark beneath that same tree, the shaft in the ground waits to receive whatever the leopard leaves behind. Now jump forward almost 2 million years to a quiet museum in South Africa and a careful scientist named C.K. Brain. For half a century before him, the reigning story of human origins had been a violent and flattering one, and it had gripped the imagination of the whole world. Caves like Swartkrans were full of shattered hominin bones, cracked skulls, broken jaws, splintered limbs, and the great early theory declared with confidence that we had done all of it to each other. The idea was seductive and dark, and it went by a memorable name, the killer ape. It held that our ancestors came down out of the trees already murderers, that the very first tool was a weapon, that the first target of that weapon was our own kind, and that violence was stamped into us from the beginning. Whole generations grew up believing that aggression was our birthright, written in blood in the floors of these African caves, proven by the broken bones of the dead. Brain did something that astonishingly almost no one before him had bothered to do. He asked a simpler and more honest question. What if we had not made this mess at all? What else was living in these hills 2 million years ago that was fully capable of shattering a skull and breaking a jaw? So he studied the entire cave as if it were a crime scene, every animal represented in it, the way bones fall and settle, what leopards leave behind, how carcasses wash and drop into shafts. The science of reading a cave floor this way, of asking who really assembled a pile of ancient bones, barely existed before him, and Brain very nearly invented it single-handed. And then he came to the specimen catalogued as SK54, that juvenile skullcap, a child's with the two neat holes punched into its dome. From the very same cave deposit, Brain had recovered the fossil lower jaw of a leopard, so he lifted it, and he fitted its two lower canines to those two holes in the child's skull. They matched, exactly. The spacing, the size, the angle, every detail lined up tooth to hole, a leopard's lower fangs sliding into wounds they had made 2 million years before. On that quiet lab bench, without a single dramatic word, the killer ape died, and half a century of belief about our violent birth died with it. The shattered bones in the cave had never been our trophies or our victims. They were a predator's leftovers, and we were the meal. Brain laid out his whole argument in a landmark book with a title that says everything in 4 words: the hunters or the hunted. And the answer he gave, patiently and with the bones to prove it, was that for most of our story, we were the hunted. It was one of those rare moments when a single careful observation, a tooth fitted to a hole, quietly dismantles a story the whole world had believed for 50 years. So let the whole picture settle now into its true and humbling shape. The cave was never a den of murderers. It was a graveyard of the eaten, a larder floor beneath a killing tree, filling slowly across the ages with bones that dropped from the dark. And Swartkrans holds not one kind of early human but 2, the heavy-jawed Paranthropus like Tsao, and early members of our own genus, Homo, walking the same deadly hills. Both of them were prey. The leopards did not care which branch of the family a skull belonged to, and the shafts swallowed our direct ancestors just as readily as they swallowed Tsao's doomed cousins. 2 separate branches of humankind, foraging the same slopes, hunted by the same cats, dropping in the end into the same dark shafts. One of those branches, Tsao's robust and heavy-jawed kind, would eventually die out entirely. The other, our own, would survive to invent the very science that finally read the truth from these bones. This is the truth that Brain handed us, and we should not rush past how much it overturns. We did not begin at the top of the world. We did not stride down from the trees as conquerors with weapons in our hands. For the vast majority of our deep story, we were the small, the slow, the soft-skinned and the sharp-eyed, the prey, the animal that slept badly, counted heads at nightfall, and lived and died at the mercy of the cats. That long apprenticeship as prey may be the most important thing that ever shaped us, because a creature that must survive by watching, remembering, and cooperating is a creature being slowly pushed toward intelligence itself. The fear in these hills was not just something we endured. It was, in a sense, the very pressure that carved the first sparks of the human mind into being. But the very same cave that holds Tsao's kind holds one more thing, higher up, in younger and shallower layers of that slow-building floor. Burned bones, bones charred hotter than any grass fire sweeping the savannah could ever have scorched them, at temperatures that only a tended, deliberate fire can reach. They are among the oldest traces of controlled fire found anywhere on Earth, roughly 1 million years old, which means that here, in this exact place at some point, something enormous changed. The very same hills that swallowed Tsao and his kind down their dark shafts later held the warm, deliberate glow of a hearth, tended by hands that had finally found an answer to the dark. It is as if the cave itself keeps a record of the turning point, the hunted below in the old layers, and above them, the first faint light of a creature that would not be hunted forever. Picture that first fire burning at the mouth of the cave, and then picture, just at the trembling edge of its light, the eyes. The cat comes down to the shaft the way it always has, drawn by the old, easy promise of soft prey in the dark, and this time it meets a wall of heat and light and stinging smoke that it does not understand, and it stops. For the first time in the long, long story of our kind as prey, the hunter hesitates at the edge of the light and does not come. We did not begin as the hunters. We began as the hunted, 2 neat holes punched in a child's skull and a cave floor filling quietly with our own dead. But somewhere in these same hills, our ancestors picked up the one thing that could finally answer the cats and learn to hold back the dark. And fire was the first thing we ever held that made a leopard, out there at the edge of the black, stop and think and decide not to come. For 2 million years, the cats had set the terms of our existence, deciding where we could sleep and when we could move and which of us would not see the morning. And then, at last, in a cave in these same hills, we lit a fire and took a little of that power back. It is the first exhale in a story that had been holding its breath since the very beginning. The night the hunted, for the first time in 2 million years, made the hunter afraid.